if you can please describe, please say your name, your art project, and the goal of the project in brief, like whatever you want to say about the art project.
Okay, so I'm Morshed Mishu, basically a cartoonist from Bangladesh. I work for a magazine named Unmad. I'm one of the assistant editor of Unmad. And I did this project started this project back in 2018 called the Global Happiness Challenge. So the idea came to me basically when in 2018 during in January, February, those war-affected zone photos from the war-affected zone came into social media and those got viral. And whenever it came in front of my newsfeed, I used to feel like frustrating. I felt frustrated. I used to have panic attacks, and I always used to think that I wish I could have done something regarding this situation that is happening, the war situation. But as I live in Bangladesh and I can't go there and participate in war or something, and I don't like war. Nobody likes war, So, and what I noticed that mostly the normal people like us, the general people, like the normal civilians, get mostly affected by the war. They'll lose their life in bombing. They'll lose their family. So when I saw those photos, I started thinking like I wish I could have done something. But only thing I know is to draw. So in February 25th, in the night, that idea came that what if I could, transform those sad photos into happiness. Through drawing, at least I can put smile on their faces. So that was the basic idea, and I started drawing. And while drawing, I saw that I can change the scenarios as well, like into happiness. So then I realized that, well, that's what I actually want to see in the world. I wanted to show that how the world would look like without war, without this destructiveness, and without this, I just wanted to show that the most important thing in our life is happiness, and that can be found in our, in our families, within our families, within our family members, and that gets lost in the war zone. Whenever war happens, people like us, the normal people, we get affected, and we lose our life, we lose our family. But those who conduct this kind of war, they usually don't get hurt. So that's the basic idea that I just wanted to show, that how the world would look like without war.
Okay, so thank you so much for the beautiful introduction. Can you tell me a bit about its connection with migration or people on the move, like why people move and its connection to your project, and how do you visualize this journey and how it is connected to your work?
Well, to be honest, when I was drawing this migration thing was not in my mind, to be honest. But there are few photos that are related to migration. Few photos when, for example, a boy who was saved from a bomb place was sitting in an ambulance, and photos like the survivors maybe who got migrated or sent to safe zones, but Yeah, to be honest, I didn't have that in my mind that whether it is related to migration or not. But the this is maybe the power of art, that maybe the artist can draw something, but the audience or whoever wants to work on that particular thing or that particular art piece, uh, they can think in different ways as well. For example, like you are finding connection, like in between war and migration. So I just wanted to show that the world would have been the beautiful place, would have been a beautiful place without war, and people gets migrated. Maybe some people gets migrated wishfully, and that's okay, I guess. Like they want to migrate in different countries for their betterment. Like they want to work in a better place, or they want to keep their family, or want to provide their family better things in their life. But other than that, wishful migration, when people are forced to leave their country. For example, I love my country, right? If somebody tells me tomorrow that you have to leave your country, I don't want to leave my country, no matter what. I was born in here, and I wanted to. I always want to do something good for my country. I want to see it as a beautiful place, peaceful place. Just because of few people couldn't agree to something, they fought. They started firing. They started a war, and telling me to leave the country. Well, I don't think that's a pleasant thing to happen. I guess no one wants to leave their home, and as people love their life and love their family, maybe some people don't even want to leave their home because of themselves. They want to live because of their family members, because of their kids, to keep them safe. So I don't think that, uh, well, nowadays when we talk about, the world is one, or we all are together, people are together, there should not be any border. We can like shift to another place, for traveling, for work purpose, for peaceful purpose. That's okay. But for war, to save our life, that's kind of sad, I guess. Like I don't find it, logical and reasonable. But things like that are happening, and people are being like, when not even they're not even being welcomed to some other place, like to some other country, because they feel like the other countries are feeling like they are maybe threats to them. But I don't think that someone who is leaving their country out of fear can be threat, and I don't think they are leaving wishfully. They wouldn't have left their country, even like if there wasn't any war, they wouldn't have lived. So I believe that everyone should be welcoming. Like for example, Bangladesh, when the Rohingya issue happened, like Myanmar was forcing Rohingyas to get out of their country. At least Bangladesh took that. Bangladesh, opened their borders to give them a place, and that's a beautiful thing, I guess. But in the meantime, that shouldn't have happened. They should have been in their country, living with their right.
Absolutely. So, like you mentioned that being forced migration is because of war. um, has made people leave their homes, and you have in your work portrayed images of people who are suffering from war, or like, rescued from, just rescued from a bombed place or whatever. And um, so like when you see, and you also mentioned that, when like they're leaving a country to come to another country for refuge, they shouldn't be treated as a problem or a security threat, because they are they're vulnerable, right? I assume that's what you mean. And so
Yeah.
how do you um, like the context for your image, the paintings that you have done, do you think that they stand as a counter narrative to um, to this issue, like to um, building safer places, or um, to humanize them, like to say like, oh, so these people have been suffering, and uh, in migration terms, people are either seen through the lens of a security threat, or they're seen through the scope of a victim. But what you showed in your art is they could have a, I mean, in your imagined world, they're neither a victim nor a security threat. They are they're just living their lives very peacefully and very happily. They're happy with their lives. um, can you elaborate on that, like how this positioning helps our narrative in our mind, or in our psyche, or how it helps our.
For me, I just, in one line, if I say that I just want a world without war, and when there is no war, you, when there is no war, you can treat a human as a human by not labeling them as refugee, or not labeling them as migrated person, or a national threat, or a vulnerable person. So the simplest thing is not to do any war, just to stop the war. And that's the only message I wanted to portray in my illustrations, that if there is no war, I guess there is no concept of being refuge, concept of being a vulnerable person, or a security threat for another person. Like when a person migrates to another country with legal papers, or proper procedure, they don't considered as threat, right? But sometimes we have seen that even if somebody go through the the proper procedure, even if they go through a proper procedure, there can be a security threat as well, right? Like if we think in a normal way, like somebody who is not who has a brutal mindset, wants to go into a different country to make them harm, they will eventually go through the procedure that any country allows. For me, I just want to see a country without war. That's the simplest, maybe the simplest way to explain my illustration. I don't know, like whether it portrays anything, any what you said, like um, you know, like the thing you mentioned, that the simplest way to explain it is like, I don't want to see any war. The war should be stopped, and when the war is stopped, nobody can tell that someone is refugee, or someone has been migrated in a negative way, or treated as photo, if you see, the affected ones are the younger, the youngest ones, like the kids.
Hmm.
Are there are is there a kid who is? Can you imagine a kid as the security threat? If you see a person, if you see maybe adult person can be a security threat maybe, but a kid who can't even maybe talk properly, is that person is a security threat, or is that person or that kid is somehow or anyhow related to war or politics?
Yeah.
So,
Hmm.
like, also, do you want a kid to be labeled as refugee, or labeled as migrated person? I think everyone should be treated as human being. There's the least, you know um, least, what's the term, like we use the term humanity, right?
Hmm.
So the humanity itself has the word human.
Hmm.
So if we can't treat a human being a human and label them as something else, I don't think that's also a kind of a discrimination on a humanity, I guess, or on a human species, I guess.
Hmm. Yes. So, like, so we'll go back to the aesthetics of um, your work, but can you tell me a bit about the communication strategies that you use? Like, what communication you use and how? Like, I know you used Board Panda. I think featured you. I know a couple of other places. So, what kind of, like, how did you get your messages across to the people that you wanted? And
Well, um, I actually didn't do anything regarding the sharing things or anything. I just drew them and posted on my Facebook page and Instagram profile, and it went. I don't know how, but it went to maybe 40 different countries and got featured in more than 200 medias. Like print medias, like social media pages, like Goat Panda, Sarcasm, Sadgasm, or Forbes. Even I was featured in Forbes as well. So I think the people who agreed to this thing, agreed to my concept, spread it by themselves. I didn't even know where it went. Like some medias, took my permission or took my interviews, wanted to know that what was my intention behind it. But more or less, the places it went, I didn't have any hand on that. They just saw my work and shared it or wrote about it because they felt like that should be uh, the thing I drew. That portion should be happening in the world, not the other side. So the communication process was like, as I draw cartoon or illustrations, itself is a language. I didn't use any word or any kind of other language. Like I didn't use any kind of dialogue or dialogue in English or any other languages. I just drew a thing which considered as a language itself. Cartoon itself is a language, and people just connected to it and related themselves that, well, yes, I also agree on that, so I'm sharing it, or I am posting it on my portal, or I am writing about it, I am sharing it in my page or my website, because I want to agree on this particular topic. And just like the artist, I want peace in the world as well. I want happiness to be established in the world.
um, it's interesting, like that you say, like it's they wanted peace as well. Uh, like, why did you term it like as a global happiness challenge? Like how
Okay,
did you come up with the hashtag or
okay. So the title came like this: that if you think if you think in that way, like globally right now the how to say it, like the most challenging thing is to find happiness, I guess. You know, like everyone is in search of happiness in one way or another. Some people are trying to find happiness in through their work, or some people are trying to find happiness through their passion. Some people are trying to find happiness through their family. But ultimately, the challenge is to find happiness, and this is like the most challenging thing globally right now, I feel like, or maybe it has been going on. So that's how the term came, the global happiness challenge, because I feel like the most challenging thing in the world right now is to find happiness.
um on that thought, why did you imagine your characters to be happy? I know you also already mentioned it, but just in if you had to answer like this question, like why did you imagine the um, media images that you see as like happy?
Well, the answer is within the illustrations, I guess. Have you seen any of the real photos that represents happiness? It doesn't, right? Every photo you see, either somebody is running for their life, saving their kid, trying to save their kid and crying. Somebody already died. Someone is maybe hanging or about to get hanged, or someone is holding their friend on their lap and crying out for help. Someone is maybe sitting on the chair but with a bloody face, blood on their faces, right? So if you see on the real photos, every photo represents sadness or a loss of life, you know. And the most important thing in our life is our life, right? Life is the most expensive thing to lose. And in the photos, they are all about to lose their life or already lost their life. So that's why basically I wanted to keep it as simple as possible, like to turn those photos to show the world that the exact people could have been happy or could have been happier with their existing scenario if there was no war. If that bombing or that fire didn't shot, maybe the person would have been playing, or the kid would have been playing on their father's lap or sleeping on their father's lap, or maybe returning home in a school bus, or maybe won a cup from a field, from a football match, and cheering with their friends, or maybe the hanging guy who was about to get hanged. That would have been like he was maybe about to propose his girlfriend, who is reading a book in a park. So scenarios would have been changed if there was no bombing or no war or no fire was shot. So that's why I tried to keep it as simple as possible. Like, and more or less I added some, added few subjects, or not subjects, I added few objects to each illustrations, like a balloon, or maybe a school bag, or maybe the fishing thing, or a flower. So yeah, things that we use which are not harmful are related to our day-to-day life. Maybe those also represents happiness as well.
Mm. Would you like to be specific? Like, if you had to choose one picture that you want to talk about, would you? Like, let's say if we talk about the child who's sitting with blood covered in his face, like I can show you the picture, like this image. Of course, you know it already because you drew it.
Yeah, yeah,
But like,
yeah.
if you had to say, like, what was the inspiration for like this image, and how do you, like, why did you choose the elements in this image?
Like for example, like the real photo, if you see the boy sitting in a ambulance, blood covered in his face, and there is a first aid kit or maybe a box kind of thing right beside him. So initially when I saw it, well, the first thing was like that was a very hard thing to draw for me because I had to look at the actual photo for a long time and in details. If you see that boy's face, is like, you know, you know, he is kind of shattered. You can see that he has no expression in his face. He's like already like, he's like lost. Not like lost everything. He even maybe lost his mind as well. On that moment, maybe he don't know how to talk or maybe how to react by the incident. But when I saw it, I felt like that maybe it can be. I thought about a lot of things, but ended up with a thing that we all educated people went through. Like, we all have went to school and came back home. And how? Most of them in a school bus. So as he was sitting in an ambulance, I tried to turn it into a school bus where or maybe a car. So where he was sitting there and his bag was right beside him with a Mickey Mouse sticker on it, and he's reading fairy tale. And maybe that was a metaphor I used. Like, the book could have been a lot of things, lot of other books, but as we know, when we used to be kid, we used to let ourselves go into the fairy land in our imagination, right? We used to read fairy tales and imagine those stories in our own ways. So I thought about like giving a book in his hand where he's reading the stories happily right after coming back from school.
Okay, so I'm gonna ask you another question about another picture, like this image, for example. This is like two girls. The clear picture of suffering, and then you, like, change the whole situation, and then there's a pigeon, and then there's they're both happy, and this image itself shows, like, this idea that people are victims, like, this they're victims and we should feel pity for them. And instead, like, when you see your picture, it's more like, they're living a good life. So what, how did you, like, juxtapose these two things together, and why in this image specifically?
Well, if you see the first, like the real photo, the two girls are, more like crying and begging for their life, maybe, or maybe searching for their parents. Like, one of them is like holding their hands like this and maybe asking, where is my mom, or where is my dad, or where is my family, or help me please. And if we think it in a normal scenario, well, I tried to think it in a normal scenario that maybe they had a beautiful home where they had a pet pigeon maybe in a cage, and pigeon is a symbol of peace, as we all know. And these two sisters, maybe, or maybe friends, hopefully they were sisters as they were wearing the same dress, So the one who is holding her hand like in a downward, I tried to give her a cage, and the other girl who is trying to beg something, I just tried to show that maybe he's begging for peace, and that's why she is freeing a pigeon as a symbol of peace.
So there is a interesting theory on this. It's called art is more than a simple representation of reality. Art is an act of world making that alters, however subtly, the fabric of the cultures that we live. Art and politics are not simply interwoven but are constitutive of one another. So, in that statement, you see like how art affects politics and politics affects arts. Um, how do you think that your images like affected uh, the general psyche, like the people who saw it? How do you think they were affected by it?
Um, well, that thing I don't know exactly, but whoever I got interacted, like the people who saw or commented, I saw, like I read how people, found hope in these illustrations and how they craved for that thing to happen in reality, For example, like I drew it in 2018 and it's 2022. Interesting fact about social media is there is no content. There is a saying that no contents usually sustain more than 4 days or 5 days or maybe a week. No issues usually, continue more than 4 days or 5 days or maybe a week. People usually forgets about those issues, and because new issues arrives and people forget about the last one, right? We all have faced that, we all have seen that. Like if you seen in our like Bangladeshi scenario, yesterday maybe it was a tea issue, and next day it's the Bangi and Tormuz issue, then the next day there's something else, right? Interesting fact about this global happiness challenge that it has been in conversation for a long time. Like it's 2022, like 4 years, almost 4 years gone, and right now you are talking about this, writing about it. We'll be writing about it for for your assignment or a project. That means people wants to, or maybe wants something that they can hold on to it and continue the conversation about the politics, the war, the peace, the happiness thing. Maybe they don't find proper content or proper element to have that conversation to go on. So maybe this global happiness challenge is an element among many other elements which is talking about or keeping the conversation alive regarding the war and the peace scenario.
Thank you.
What?